This is entitled Jamaican Pastor Demanding Sacrificial Human Beheading. And I want to first give a shout out to one of our friends of the show, Atheist J, who actually brought this particular story to my attention about a month ago.
Yes. Thank you,
Um,
Atheistic J.
Yes, thank you, Atheist Jay. Really do appreciate that. And also to Esther, because you did cover this story when on your channel when it first came out. I know that I talked about it with my mom because, as you guys know, my mom is from Jamaica. That's my maternal side. It's from the island, man. Irie, yeah, Irie, man.
I
Yeah,
am
man.
on.
Yeah,
I'm
man.
gonna
Yeah,
stop.
from the yard, man. So, so we have some updates concerning the story, but before I get into all of that, I just want to kind of give like a summation. Kevin Smith, who was a cultist leader in Montego Bay, Jamaica, who also lived in Canada for about 10 years and went to school to become a psychologist, recently actually died in a car accident. For those who are not familiar with who Kevin Smith he is the self proclaimed bishop of his church called Pathways International Kingdom Restoration in Montego Bay. And basically, what happened on October 17th is that he instructed one of his members, 37-year-old Andre Ruddock, to decapitate a female church member after ordering Ruddock to slash her throat, according to an unnamed witness to the human sacrifice killings that actually took place at the church on that date. Now, some background on that whole you dig was on in October, three members of Smith's church died in a ritual conducted by the now deceased minister Tanika Gardner, Michael Brown, and Kavan Palmer. And Smith was arrested on that day after police swooped in to his church in Montego Bay in response to a report that human sacrifice was actually going to be taking place, and his followers were dressed in white robes. And according to the survivors who spoke to the local Jamaican media outlets, the ritual involved senior members of the church stabbing and slashing several congregants who were told that they were embarking on a heavenly journey. And two of the church members were killed over the course of the ritual, and one was killed during the police raid on the property. And I'm going to go ahead and stop there. Obviously, it's a very
Mm-hmm.
tragic story. If you all get a chance to actually look at the article, and there's some links to
Yeah.
that, of course, below. There are also photographs of the aftermath of the police raid. Including some of the dead parishioners that were killed during this particular ordeal. It's not for the faint of heart. Viewer discretion is advised. However, we felt it was necessary to talk about because of, uh, like I said, this religious indoctrination is very real, and the religious extremism is very real. And it doesn't just happen in America. It doesn't just happen in other countries. It's
Mm-hmm.
happening in our
Mm-hmm.
hemisphere, and it needs attention. So, excuse me. Jenna, I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to you first so that we can, kind of talk a little bit more about this particular story.
Yeah, by all means, Cynthia's right. Viewer discretion is advised when reading, even just reading, not even viewing pictures, reading the article itself, the main article, because it is the eyewitness account reports that it just goes line for line, the exact accounts from all the witnesses there, including the actual now imprisoned Andre Reddick that murdered one of the parishioners. It's it, it's graphic. It is graphic, but it just gives you that timeline of the words coming out of Kevin Smith's mouth. He just, upfrontly just walks into his church and was like, "Okay, I am Lord, do this," basically. And it's
Yep.
just the most, I mean, we haven't been we haven't had our eyes covered to stories like this before, but you know, in reflection of Jamaica, they're like, it's like the most heavily populated as far as church, literally on every corner.
Yeah.
Like just the demand of, and it's not just the uprising of those all in faithful of Christianity. It's these subgroups that have branched off of the Christian faith with these overly charismatic, I should say, narcissistic cult leaders that just branch out and cover their arms over these very, you know, um, fragile followers wanting to find that acceptance in faith and mislead them, misguide them to the point where they lose their own lives. It's horrific. And unfortunately, yes, Kevin Smith did lose his life in the process of them, picking him up from his home or escorting him to the police station to be, charged for murder
Right.
charges. But it's bad, but good that he is done with from causing more harm to others.
Yeah, this story of course strikes home because like, well, of
Hmm.
course this is like in kind of in my backyard a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the things when I first like read this story, I was just thinking because like when I even brought it up to my mom, and she told me, "Oh yeah, that's not new." This is something that has happened, in before in that particular area, where you have like these rising of cultist leaders that preach, or they kind of marry uh Christianity and kind of like ancestral worship that was brought over
Hmm.
from Western Africa through the transatlantic slave trade. um Different Caribbean countries have a word for it. You have like I believe like in Puerto Rico and Cuba it's called Santeria. In Haiti it's voodoo. And also part in in that area, and also in Jamaica it's called obia. And so and this is often rituals, fire, smoke, animal sacrifices, sometimes human sacrifices. And then when you kind of marry both of these particular extremisms together, it balloons from there. I kind of almost feel like Kevin brought in that whole sensibility as well. But Esther, talk a little bit about this too, because like I said, I know that because you broke this story on your channel.
This is something interesting to note about this particular pastor. Turns out he was I think he was in Canada
Mm-hmm.
for a time,
Right.
and he had been charged for some kind of sexual assault, some kind of sexual. Um, I'm not sure what exactly it is. And it looks like he was either deported
Mm.
back to Jamaica or made his way back. So there's a history. There's something following, and it looks like he was engaged with boys. He had
Mm.
boys hanging around him. He
Mm-hmm.
had, young men, which I'm not 100%, don't quote me, but it looks like he was engaged in sexual encounters
Mm.
with the young men in his ministry. And for just for I'm not sure, many of these people who come across like this, there's always something sexual. There's always something, it's always the case with these people. And I think it may have been avoided, maybe, because if he's had this past from Canada and has come now to back to Jamaica, I think that's where I support people signing the sex offenders register. To how do we know that? How do you uh, how do you know these people who have done this bad things?
Right.
They just change location, and
Mm.
he just puts on his robe and just allowed to do these things. It's sickening. This story is quite sickening, and I plan to speak more on this because he's been charged. Although he's dead, he's been charged posthum. How do you say it when you're charged from your
Posthumously.
death?
Postmortem.
Posthumous.
Posthumous.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
Yes,
yeah,
sound
I
it,
was
sound
completely
it
wrong.
out.
Sorry.
he's been charged posthumously for the deaths that have
Hmm.
occurred. So this is still an ongoing story.
Hmm.
It's it's still watch this space.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Malty, because you got stuff to say. You always got great stuff to say. Go ahead.
Um, yeah, in reading a little bit, it is really strange that so this Smith was arrested at the time of the altercation, if that's what you want to call it, and only now, when he was being transported, him and a police officer that I guess was driving him uh, died in the car accident. Um, so that's obvious. That's just seems strange. Um, and then and I look at he had written a biography, or had a biography written, which said that he had like 800 members, and he's been an ordained minister since the age of 18. Um, and he's so humble. And now, when it comes down to it, and you're looking at 144 men, women, and children, and that was at the church in Montego Bay, where these three people had died, where he was telling his followers to kill each other. It's I did see that there was some things where he was um, against taking the vaccine for COVID, and that he had some other strange ideas, like he wanted to. He had a bunch of livestock at the church, and when asked why he doesn't keep them out in the country, he said he didn't feel safe being out in the country where you should keep cattle. So yes, this is definitely some very strange goings on here with Smith. Yeah. So one good thing that I did read at the very end of this article is that that all of the adults that were there, that they were taken into custody and charged with the country's breaking the Disaster Relief Management Act. This is so they were 144 people in a small space, so it was COVID related.
Hmm.
The children that were involved, there were 14 of them. They have been taken into custody and now are wards of the state. So hopefully that will give them a chance to get out. I mean, in wards of the state in Jamaica, I don't know how well that's going to be for these children. I'm hoping that it could be better than what would have gone on if they continue to be brought up in a situation like the Prophet of the Nations Church. Restoration Ministries.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Indeed, yeah. This story is definitely worth looking at a little bit more. I'm not too familiar with the foster system of Jamaica. They're really good at keeping records. I know that for sure. Um, but as far as like that is concerned, not really sure. But we'll definitely keep you, dear listeners and viewers, up to date as we are getting more information as stories have will have broken. Yeah, let's go with that.